Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to look at a new innovation in the creativity archetype in Modern, bitter creativity. With the introduction of bitter reunion, it makes it a lot easier to get a hasty Archon, but also an Archon a lot earlier than a turn 4 creativity, and cheats Archons onto the battlefield in different ways reliably, and provides a true nut hand for the deck, which is an extremely attractive thing. So let's look at this new version of creativity together. So this version of creativity still has the creativity package. What you're trying to do is get tokens on the battlefield, either with Fable of the Mirror Breaker or Dwarven Mine, or fetching up Dwarven Mine, or getting back fetch lands with Red and 6 and playing Dwarven Mine. And then either casting Indomitable Creativity or Transmogrify on those tokens to reveal the top card of our deck until we reveal an artifact or a creature. The only artifact or creature we play in our entire deck is Archon of Cruelty and Sarah's Emissary out of the sideboard. We'll talk about that in a second. So for 4 mana, you can cheat Archon of Cruelty onto the battlefield. And if you have creativity, you can cheat multiple Archon of Cruelties onto the battlefield, which is incredibly powerful. When it enters end attacks, your opponent loses 3 life, sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, and discards a card, and I gain 3 life and draw a card. It is incredible. If you get multiple of these on the battlefield, the game is probably over. But what makes this innovation of creativity, and actually a Jund version of creativity, even better is we are cheating Archon on the battlefield in a different way. First off, we have Bitter Reunion. Bitter Reunion allows us to discard a card and draw 2 cards, and we can pay 1 mana and have creatures we control gain haste until end of turn, which is pretty good, even just combined with creativity and Transmogrify. We want to dig through a lot of our deck to be able to find these enabling cards, and being able to give those things haste even after we combo really shuts the door on our opponent almost all the time. But we normally don't want Archon of Cruelty in our hand, especially our opening hand. So Bitter Reunion lets us discard the Archon of Cruelty and just cash it in for 2 cards. Even that by itself would be totally okay. But we're also going to play for Persist, which leads us to our first, nut hand. Being able to go turn 2 Bitter Reunion, discard Archon, turn 3 Persist, with the 3rd mana, pay the 1 to sacrifice Bitter Reunion and give Archon haste on turn 3. A hasty Archon on turn 3. To be fair, it's a 5/5, but it is amazing. So what is great about this deck specifically is that it cheats Archon on the battlefield in 2 different ways, which makes it incredibly hard to sideboard against. The only thing that's actually good against this version is Counter Magic, which we can fix with Veil of Summer. Do you sideboard in Graveyard Hate? Because then we'll just kill you with Creativity and Transmogrify. Do you sideboard in Spot Removal? Because then we'll just kill you with Graveyard Hate. It is so hard to play against. And being able to threaten in 2 different ways with cheating Archon on the battlefield is definitely what this deck needed, in my opinion. If they locked down Creativity and Transmogrify, the game was just over, and that was no good. It also gives the deck a ton of staying power. If you're in very, very long grindy matchups, you've gone through a few Archons, maybe the Unholy Heated some, maybe you discarded some early in the game. A top deck Persist is just like a top deck Creativity, but way harder to interact with, which again, is where we want to be. So let's bring you through the rest of the deck if you've never seen a Creativity deck before. The support cards, if you will. We're playing Jund mana. Mostly playing green for sideboard cards, and red and 6 is what this deck kind of needs, because it's really important we hit our land drops so we can do some big creativities, but also we'll want to use fetch lands on turn 1, 2, and 3 to grab our colored lands, and then on turn 4 on, we want our fetch lands to be able to hit Dwarven Mine, so being able to get back fetch lands with red and 6 to be able to put Dwarven Mine on the battlefield to get that token so we can creativity or Transmogrify is super important. Other than that, there isn't much going on in this mana base. We're playing 6 1-mana removal spells. We're playing 4 Lightning Bolts, and we're playing 2 Fatal Push. Lightning Bolt is pretty very It's just very good to just burn down for that last little bit, especially since this is a very aggressive version of Creativity, and it's a removal spell. And Fatal Push is actually getting a lot better as the Blue-Red Prowess deck becomes more powerful. We're also playing 4 Thoughtseize, and I think if you are playing the Bitter Reunion version of this deck, I think you need to play Thoughtseize. So 1, Thoughtseize is just an excellent card to be able to tear up your opponent's hand. But 2, it gives us another way to discard Archon of Cruelty if we have a Persist in our hand. The only card that rots in our hand in this entire deck on a reasonably consistent basis is Persist. If we don't have an Archon in the graveyard, then Persist does nothing. And the Thoughtseize yourself, discard Archon, Persist happens actually a lot more than you'd imagine, and also makes Thoughtseize good even in the late game, where Thoughtseize normally isn't that good in the late game. We've already talked about Persist and Bitter Reunion. Terminate, again, another awesome removal spell, gives us game against Amulet and other decks that rely on 1 creature. Red and 6 we've already talked about. Was important to get a bunch of dwarves and deals with Regavan pretty efficiently. Fable the Mirror Breaker is just awesome because it gives us 2 targets in 1 card for creativity and transmogrify. The 2/2 Goblin you can target, and also the transformed reflection of Kiki-Jiki you can target. And even the middle ability is excellent because you want to be able to dig through your deck to find the cards that actually do things in your entire deck. As far as the sideboard goes, it's really important we play a second target in the sideboard because of cards like Necromentia or other cards like that, Surgical Extraction or whatever, so that we can still transmogrify and creativity for stuff. The card of choice, originally I thought Iona, but Iona's legendary and Persist says non-legendary. So I play Sarah's Emissary in the sideboard because I can still discard it with Reunion, hit it with Persist. And actually a lot of decks, if you just say creature, your opponent can't really win, right? Against Hammer Time, you say creature, and the game's pretty much over. Against Rhinos, you say creature, and if they don't have a Leyline Binding, the game is pretty much over. So it's actually very, very powerful. You side it in when you naming the thing is better than Archon, or if they're playing black, right? If they're playing the Surgical or Necromentia effects. Speaking of Necromentia, we're playing Necromentia for decks that have a single win condition, or if they don't have something in their deck, they can just lose. Things like Crashing Footfalls, things like the Mirror Match, stuff like that. We're playing 2 Brotherhood End. Brotherhood End is actually an incredible sideboard card, right? It can wipe the board on these go-wide decks, which there are more and more go-wide decks popping up, but also being able to destroy all artifacts of mana value 3 or less is amazing against Hammer Time, is amazing against Breach. It's just really, really relevant on both sides of this. Speaking of Artifact and Enchantment Hate, we are splitting our Artifact and Enchantment Hate with 2 Nature's Claim and 2 Boseiju. Nature's Claim is just really solid as a 1-mana card, and Boseiju being totally uncounterable and you can't really interact with it is extremely powerful. Playing 4 Veil of Summer for counter magic and Thoughtseize and Grief decks, so they can't tear up our hand or stop us from doing what we're doing. And we're playing a Hitsutsugu Consumes All. I definitely mispronounced that. Mostly the mode that we side this in for is 1. Sometimes we side this in for 2, but mostly we're siding it in as the first chapter, which destroying things with mana value 1 or less. Again, similar to Brothers said, really good against Hammer Time, pretty solid against Breach, and anything else that destroying things with mana value 1 or less is really awesome. In any case, this is an amazing version of creativity, a version that might be the best version of creativity. I think attacking from 2 different sides in the graveyard and through creativity and transmogrify is really, really incredible. I hope you try it out. Let me know how it goes. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.